Today, I'm going to be taking a trip on a ship that was built in 1959, and we're going to be taking a look at some of the fire alarm devices and other life safety systems that are on this ship. This ship is the MV Coho, which is operated by the Black Ball Ferry line. I won't go into too much detail of the ship itself, as I previously did a video of this ship departing and arriving from Victoria, BC with drone footage and footage of it docking and its arrival and departure. Today, where this video is going to be different is we're actually going to be stepping on aboard this ship and taking a look around the decks of the MV Coho, taking a look at the different fire alarm and life safety and electrical systems that are on this ship. And this is in what's now a series of videos, where today it's on the Coho, but in the past I've covered BC Ferry's Coastal Class, Spirit Class, Salish Class, and the C Class of vessels. With that said, unfortunately, most of my viewers, unlike myself, aren't interested in the ships themselves, but rather some of the systems that are aboard the ships. And that's what we're going to be doing, so let's go ahead and start this video off with watching the MV Coho arrive in Victoria, BC for this crossing to Port Angeles, Washington. Once the ferry is moored at the dock, firstly, all of the vehicles and passengers that are arriving in Victoria from Port Angeles will have to disembark the ship, which will be done from the starboard vehicle door on the side of the ship. On the other side of the water in Port Angeles, that is done from the stern vehicle door. You can see the ship's captain out on the bridge wing guiding the ship into its berth. This is a twin-screwed ship without any bow thrusters. Then once moored, you can see all of the vehicles can now exit the ship using this starboard door. When the Coho is at its berth, it is secured by lines tying the ship up to the shore. This is different than the BC Ferries ships that I've covered in the past, where they use bow and stern loading vehicle decks. So opposed to having ropes securing the ship to the shore, the ships will maintain thrust pressing them into the docks. Here we can see the careful process of large tractor trailers exiting the ship, which being a side loading vessel, in this case on this side, is a much more complex process. But soon enough, it was our turn to load the ship. We were lucky enough to be the first vehicle on, which also means we get to be the first vehicle off. So because the ship is astern, loading and unloading on the other side, we will drive all the way up to the stern door of the vessel. I am now making my way up the aft stairs, which take you right out onto the promenade deck at the stern of the ship, opposed to the other stairwells which take you inside. What is that, MBG-12LX or just MBG-12? Looks like just MBG-12, conventional. Which that later turned out to be wrong. This ship is a full addressable notifier system, which we'll take a look at. It used to be a pyrotronic system, I believe. Here is one of the main stairwells in the ship, which you can see is very 1950s, as is the rest of the ship has been mostly untouched and has kept its very 50s, 60s vibe to it. I think it is also worth noting that BC Ferry's first two ships, making the Sydney class, were based off the design of the MV Coho. BC Ferry's later V-class vessels were also then a later iteration of that design, all of which were built by naval architect Philip F. Spaulding. Here I've paused the video to take a look at some of the devices on the ceiling. Firstly, we can see the really old exit signs, which are such a cool looking fixture. We can also see the smoke detector, which of course isn't original to the ship, as originally I don't think the ship would have had anything until sometime in the mid-90s, I believe, is when the US Coast Guard required ships to have fire alarm systems, and that's when I believe it was a pyrotronic system before being at some point changed to notifier, where we can see that detector is an FSP 851. We can also see the really old PA speakers on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, and some of the other old electrical fixtures here. Yeah, absolutely. Where are you going? Right here is another closer look at the pull stations, being notifier NBG12LXs mounted on what I believe are called SB-IO surface mount boxes that are designed specifically for these pull stations. Yeah, that interior is definitely 50s, eh? Here's another one of our exit signs. This one is mounted in this outdoor covered area, which I can assume these are probably original to the ship. Thanks. FSP 851. So monitor module probably for the pull station on the other side. I said that prior to learning that all the pull stations were addressable. I had just not seen them inside with the flashing light yet, and I'd only seen the outside ones, which was too bright to see the light, so I assumed it was conventional. However, that is not the case. While I have the video paused here, this is also a good time to take a look at this emergency fixture. You can see that light, which is installed on the left of the screen with an E in it. And from my past experience on ships, that usually means it's an emergency light. So I'm going to have to assume that there is a transfer switch, much like you would find in buildings with line voltage emergency lighting, where it will switch between sources, whether it's the main generator or an emergency generator, which on ships is always, or most always, from what I've seen, installed at a higher level in the ship, so that in a event that the ship is sinking, that the emergency generator will be higher and will keep running for as long as possible to keep essential power on in the ship. I paused the video right here to show a few different items of safety equipment. First of all, along the ship's railing, you can see that there are life preservers or life rings installed, many of which do have EPIRBs on them. EPIRBs are emergency position indicating radio beacons, which if that life ring is needed to be thrown over for someone, it can then be located. You can also see along this promenade deck, as well as other locations on the ships, there are life jackets housed in these life jacket containers under the windows. You can also see, if we zoom in here, we have these outdoor speakers. These are part of the PA system on the ship. Here is a closer look at the outdoor speakers, which are a horn-style compression driver, I would assume, which function as the ship's PA, which is a very important item to have on a ship. Not sure if they also function as the general alarm on the ship too, as the ship does not have a designated specific fire alarm, but rather a general alarm, which I can assume that the fire alarm functions as probably a alarm that will be seen on the bridge and or engineering spaces. And on a ship where you'd have trained personnel, they would respond to that alarm, and then if it's deemed necessary, the general alarm could be sounded, and then also the PA system could be used for specific announcements to handle the situation accordingly. That's how I'm assuming it's used. I don't know the actual specific protocols. This is the ship's whistle or horn, powered off of compressed air, and these have multiple purposes other than just warning other ships of this ship's presence. Depending on the blasts of the whistle, it will signal different movements that the ship is going to do, as well as signaling other general alarms on the ship or abandoned ship, or different blasts of the horns can mean different things. The dual tone whistle on this ship does have a really good sound to it. I know there are some people that are really into the whistles and know exactly what brand and model and type is used. Alright, engines have started. Now they will head astern, swinging around, and then go forward, leaving the harbor. That dual tone whistle sounds so good on this ship. One of my favorites. This is the Johnson Street Bridge in Victoria, and is a bridge that can open up to allow ships to go through, as the Point Hope shipyard is just on the other side. This bridge here is a new one, which I believe is around 2018 when this one went installed, and replaced the old Johnson Street Bridge, which also had a separate opening section for rail traffic. I think they just put it forward. Heard the engine stop. Put it in reverse, Terry. There we go. Unlike almost all the BC ferries, this ship does not have variable pitch propellers. Up above the promenade deck here, you can see where the ship's rescue boat and rescue boat davits are installed, as well as the ship's life rafts. Here's a photo I took from the wharf in Port Angeles, and if we zoom in here, you can see where the rescue boat is installed, as well as the life rafts. So it looks like some of them they have done addressable, but not everything. So notifier panel of some sorts. That's back down to the vehicle deck. Cool there. This is one of the ship's general alarm bells, which are installed around the interior of the ship. Here's another notifier, FSP 851, and you can see that the light fixture just ahead of it also has an E on it, designating it as an emergency light, whereas the one to the left does not. This is looking through the window of the aft covered area of the ship, looking forward, and you can see where the life rafts are installed, and you can see that they are all equipped with hydrostatic release units, which are those little round black objects holding them down, which will release underwater once they get to a set depth, so that if these were for some reason not manually released, they would automatically release if the ship was to sink. So what I said earlier about that being a modern module is wrong. Everything's addressable, and looks to me like an ice layer module because it's blinking yellow. So that's my bad. On the vehicle deck here, there is fire suppression, much like is on the BC Ferry's vessels. It's the same deal here. We have what look to be sprinkler discharge heads. I'm not sure if it's a chemical extinguishing product or just water, but there are discharge heads installed. These aren't like the type that you would see with a glass bulb in them. They are already open, so these would likely be set up into zones where a valve would open in a corresponding zone to a fire and release the suppression water or chemicals into that area. Noisy, but it's not this noisy. Maybe Old New West is, I don't know. Open the door. Okay. And there we go. We have arrived in Port Angeles and am now exiting the ferry. And then after a very short visit, due to needing to be at the ferry terminal 90 minutes before departure, we then turned around and made it onto the next ferry going back, which this trip of only spending 20 minutes across the border made Canadian Border Services quite suspicious of what this trip was all about. It was no issue making it into the US, however, coming back into Canada was a little bit more suspicious to Canadian Border Services. Now on the trip back, I was able to look at the life safety plan on the ship and take a look at the general arrangements of the decks as well as where safety equipment is installed. It's usually the map that I want to find whenever I go on a ship. It's quite interesting. So firstly, I'm taking a look at the engine room and machinery space where we can see the two main engines for ship propulsion, as well as we can see the steering gear room and some of the pumps. So we can see the fire sprinkler pumps, the bilge pumps, ballast pumps, and we can also see the CO2 bottles, which I'm not sure if those are just for the engine room or if they're for other spaces too. However, this is definitely an interesting area of the ship to take a look at. Now, there is also all of the electrical and communication layout talked about, and it didn't look like I got a clear enough shot to pause on that, but this is the promenade deck, which I believe is also the main deck on this ship, or maybe that's the next one up, but I think this might be considered the main deck. Not exactly sure, but definitely lots to see here. All of the life safety equipment and seating and just general arrangement of the ship. And you can see that again it's the right main here vehicle deck, this which map is a little bit different, but shows the different decks on top of each other. So this is the life safety plan of the main deck or the vehicle deck, and you can see the different fire suppression zones represented on the map with those little green showerhead looking objects, and you can see all the fire extinguishers, the general alarms, manual activation points, and all sorts of the different equipment which is installed. Pretty cool. And then this one right here, this is showing the sun deck as well as the bridge, and also the next deck up, which they are calling the housetop, it looks like, which is where the funnel is, and also this is where our emergency diesel generator is in the base of the funnel. It's a pretty common spot for them on these ships, is to be found at the base of the funnel, so that's your emergency generator in there. So a few things I want to point out here. We can see the crew accommodations on the sun deck, navigation, bridge, and that's all crew space up here. You can also see the different life rafts, which you can see their occupancy that they're rated at too, 50 persons. You can see the rescue boats, and we can also see the location of the fire alarm control panel, which is listed as Fire Detection System Master Control Panel. In the bridge or wheelhouse, there's also controls for the general alarm and the ventilation system, so I'm assuming that's manual controls for dampers, to close dampers. And there's also other controls for the fire doors, so you can manually shut the fire doors, as well as the watertight doors. You can see there is controls for watertight doors and fire doors. Also, where the emergency generator is located is the battery room for battery emergency backup, as well as CO2 suppression for it. And we can see very specifics like the size, that they are 50-pound bottles of the CO2 suppression. And we can see that there is 3 of them. We can also see the phone location and extinguishers, and also the extinguisher types and the extinguisher ratings, which I'm not an expert on that, but I'm sure somebody else could tell me more. So if you're interested, pause this and take a look at it all you want, as there's some pretty interesting stuff to see. I'm a real nerd for this sort of stuff. I took this clip right here because I remember noticing that the radar wasn't on and operational, which I assumed it always had to be. I've never seen on the BC Ferries vessels the radar not being used. However, I'm wondering if this ship is governed by a different set of rules because it's a US ship. It is going into Canadian waters, so I'm not sure how it all plays along and how that works. This would be governed by US Coast Guard regulations, whereas BC Ferries is Transport Canada. However, this is going into Canadian waters, and I'm not sure if it would also be governed by Transport Canada as well, as it's an international ship, or not. I'm not sure how that plays together or what the rules are. It was just simply an observation that I noticed the radar wasn't on, which I thought it would always need to be, especially on a day like this when visibility was pretty bad. However, as visibility got worse going back to Victoria, the radar was then switched on by then. So there you can see the radar is on. There is 2 different radars operational. I believe one is long range, one is shorter range. I'm not an expert in this. I'm not a mariner, and I'm not educated on radar systems. Just simply, I believe that's how it works. I would have thought it would have been on the whole time because, I mean, sure, the visibility did get worse approaching Victoria, but it wasn't as if it was good the whole time at all. So I would have thought it would have always been on, but it wasn't. So if anyone has an answer to that or knows what's going on, let me know. I'm curious. I'm always like to learn about this sort of things. Can't even see like all the way into the inner harbor. It's fog in the way. Oh, there's a floater. The helicopter's gone. could see two different de Havilland DHC-3 otters departing Victoria Inner Harbor, which is a quite busy seaplane airport. You often see DHC-3 otters and DHC-6 twin otters operated by Harbour Air and Kenmore Air. I believe there is some others too, and there are multiple other aircraft types you see operating out of here. Alrighty, so then it was time to go back down to the vehicle deck to get ready to depart the ship once again on that starboard vehicle exit entry door in the side of the ship. And that's where this video comes to an end. And then it was time to have a check-in with Canadian Border Services, who were quite questioning of this strange trip just to go on a ship back and forth. And then it was time to get searched by Canadian Border Services. Like I said earlier, it was pretty easy to get into the US. That was no problem. It was coming back where that's where things, where they thought this trip seemed a little weird to them, which, fair enough. So anyways, that's going to be it for this video. I hope you guys did enjoy this video of taking a look around the MV Coho operated by Blackball Ferry Line, checking out the different life safety systems on the ship, and just in general taking this little voyage across. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and if you do have any comments, questions, feel free to leave those down in the comment section down below. And if you do enjoy my channel, make sure to subscribe. Also, if you are interested, I do have an Instagram account at Pickle700 for bonus content, stuff posted earlier on the YouTube channel, that sort of thing. Alrighty guys, thanks for watching.